Hello, everyone. It's Mental Podcast is back. I'm sorry for being so long since the last episode. In between, I went to Barcelona for a trip, and I did my solo show there. Then I had a minor burnout. So right now, finally, I cleared my task list, and I have some capacity again to do the podcast. Thank you so much for coming back, and I'm glad you are still listening. So today we have a guest. He is the first poet on our podcast, and I let himself to introduce.
Hi, my name is Cedric Till. I do poetry, I do music, and whatever else tickles my creative fancy. I've been doing this for roughly 20 years, at least what writing is concerned, about 23 years. But yeah, just exploring and learning new things.
Mm-hmm. And how did you started to do creative work?
I think for me, everything started as a valve to work through some of the things that I was going through as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
where I didn't really have people that I felt I could confide in. So I just confided into a pen and a paper, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And at the age of 5, I was introduced to rap by
Mm.
my cousin at the time, who gave me one of those old 90-minute double-sided tapes with 2 albums by Ice-T on it, and I just fell in love with rap. I mean,
Mm.
after a while, I just like decided I wanted to do it myself, and so the journey began in March '99.
And you started with rap music, and
Yeah.
what type of creative outlet are you doing now?
I'm still doing music, but it's one of these things that I just decided to take the pressure off of myself. I used to have like, I really was hard on myself regarding certain expectations that I had for myself and what I
Mm.
wanted to do with it. And nowadays, I just want to work with people that I consider, you know, both good people and good artists,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of have fun with it again instead of, you know, racking my brain over what I need to be or who I need to sound like or what I need to make money with and all these things. Just want to do it, have fun with it, and hopefully some people connect with it.
Mm-hmm. And I met you at a poetry event.
Yeah.
And how did you start to do poetry?
I think I wrote my first poem back in 2007, but at the time it was just because I received an instrumental and I knew this wasn't going to be suitable for rap, so I just decided to write a poem on it. And then I just didn't do poetry for a long time again. And around 2015, I figured, okay, so I've been doing rap for roughly 15 years at this point, and I kind of don't know who I'm talking to anymore because I've changed so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did away with instrumentals and started to perform my work a cappella,
Mm-hmm.
still in rhyme form, but I put a lot of effort and time into wordplay and, like making sure that it's not just loose sentences strung together, but actually creating layers
Mm-hmm.
in understanding and layers in how one can interpret what I'm saying. And I realized that people who didn't know that I was doing rap and they just gravitated to the words, and there were people that I never thought would even be interested in anything I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, I just decided, okay, I guess I'm doing this too now.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about we had a private chat before.
Yeah.
You talk about doing poem is really aligned with your a mental health journey, your healing journey.
Yeah.
From what I understand, I had a feeling that it's your mental health challenge start at a very young
Yeah.
age of your life.
Yeah.
Uh, you can go you can share as much or as little as you want.
Yeah.
So, would you like to introduce to us um, w- w- what are the mental health challenges were you or are you facing?
I think it's been my challenge has turned more into a journey of accepting and kind of like integrating some of these things. You know, it was like when I was young. To start with, I mean, I grew up with my mother, and I didn't really have contact with my father for a long time. I'm a multiracial person, so I grew up in a predominantly white German family, but my father is black.
Mm-hmm.
And to know that you're the only colored kid in a group of white people, it's even if you don't understand what that means, it still makes you feel like kind of like the ugly duckling.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an issue or when I was very young, and it turned like the conflicts that came from that would go into my mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
But then on top of that, I had been diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age due to impulse control issues and anger management issues and just an inability to sit still
Mm-hmm.
and problems to focus on one thing for a longer time. I would just constantly shift my attention between things. And in the 90s, people just didn't know what to do with it. They were like, I was in a psychiatry for kids, along with people who had like bulimia and other issues. And they just gave me Ritalin,
Mm-hmm.
which made me lethargic. It made me almost catatonic in a way. So they very fast decided that, now we can't do this. We need to give you something else. So they gave me Tegretol, which is another psychoactive drug. And after 6 months in the children's psychiatry in the Berlin Charité, I was transferred to a group home for kids with such problems on the outskirts of Potsdam. Between Potsdam and Werder, there's a village called Ghetto, and there's this group home where I was for 3.5 years. And while there, I at some point decided to take myself off the medication because even when I was like 8, 9, I was saying to myself, if I can't beat what I'm dealing with my own mind, I'll forever be relying on people to give me pills, and it doesn't help what I'm actually dealing with. It's just like, okay, this will numb the symptoms, but it doesn't address the problem. So I just stopped taking the pills, and I decided to find ways to deal with the anger issues, to deal with the attention span issues and all that stuff. And then from there, I go into school. My mom was just let go of a job that was very lucrative for her, but around the 2000s, there was a massive wave of unemployment in Germany. And we had to live in pretty rough shape for most of my youth. So that was an issue in a school where most of the kids were middle class or better, and they made me feel that. They bullied me. And again, I had choices. Either I let that, put me down, or I confront. And as a kid, I always chose to confront. Sometimes I made things worse, and I got known as like a trouble kid and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to be a victim, so that came in there as well. Then, due to the fact that my mother was not equipped to deal with me and this existential situation that she had, for some of my youth, at least until I was like 15, when she didn't know what to do, she hit me. So that obviously didn't help matters either. And then, I think depression came in when I was around 14, 15, when I didn't feel like I was understood and didn't feel like I had people to confide in, people that I could trust. And so I withdrew, and I started to just get into like kind of like use music and sports as a way to escape these things.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I finished high school, but I decided I wanted no parts of that institution.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't go to the university to try and study there. I just flung myself into work, basically. Mm-hmm. And that was like basically from my childhood to my adolescence. And then in the midst all of that, I didn't really have a chance to explore issues like identity and so on and so forth, because I was too busy fighting with myself and fighting with everything around me. And so all that stuff came later. And in the 20s, I'm now 33. Mm-hmm. In my 20s, I just decided I need to address all these things one at a time. And I don't care if, I see other people in their 20s, they're having the time of their life doing whatever the fuck they want, right? For me, it was like, nah, this is the time where I got to work on myself. Mm-hmm. And I mean, work's not done, obviously. It'll never be done. But I think where I'm at now, I've developed tools to deal with it. I've developed not just coping mechanisms, but really routines that help me regain my center. So when I feel that I'm overwhelmed with stuff, I'll go out and walk. Mm-hmm. And I just walk with no destination. I've lived in Berlin most of my life, but even so, there's places I've never been. Mm-hmm. And I just go there walking, and I discover that there's like parks that I've never seen before, and I just kind of like let time go, mm-hmm. And that's been a huge blessing for me. And obviously also therapy. Mm-hmm. It's not something I do a whole bunch. It's more like whenever I start to hit a roadblock in my own process, I need like a professional opinion, a secondary perspective to help me kind of like look at things from a different angle. And then, yeah, also just listening to other people as they tackle their own challenges and like, mm-hmm. oh, this is interesting. This worked for you? Cool. Why not do that myself and try if it works,
Yeah, I have a few. Thank you so much for sharing
no problem.
Your story. I recognize of a lot of elements from my own journey, like growing up in a impoverished family, with a single mother, dealing with depression. Being bullied at school, not feeling fit in, the difficult relationship with the mother. Like on one hand, they are the person who's most close to us. There's lots of love involved, but it's so hard to raise a child alone.
Yeah.
And they have their own demons to fight, and they have their own anger issue to manage.
It's true.
And lots of these issues was not dealt, and eventually turned to violence against us, and then that generates lots of hatred. So, as a young kid, how to deal with this love and hate relationship is. It's very hard to process.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you a lot for sharing this. I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
First, now we are sitting face to face. I was really surprised when you told me you are a biracial person. Please forgive my ignorance. I grew up in China. Like we don't have the concept of race.
Yeah.
So I am really curious. If you grow up with your mom and your dad is absent in your life,
yeah,
while you look totally white, at least from my perspective.
And yeah, I like
would it like how this race play a role in your life if you look white and your black dad is absent in your life?
Yeah.
So that's my question.
You know, this is another thing that like I can laugh about it now because like I've done a lot of work to to understand the dynamics at play. When I was born, I was a lot darker, you know, and the funny thing with my skin is it's changed a lot over the years. When I was 4 years old, I was literally pale and blonde, you know, and then when I was in my teenage years, I was more like caramel skinned, and then again as I grew older, then my melanin started to fade again, and now I am what I am. But people have not been able to put me in any kind of box that fit me all my life. If I allow my beard to grow out into a full blown like full beard, right, and I have like a beanie cap on, it's winter, I will have a Turkish gentleman walk up to me and say assalamu alaikum. It has happened, and I'm courteous, so I'll say walaikum salam, but in the back of my mind I'm like, I do eat bacon. I've had you know, black people thinking I'm white. I've had white people thinking I'm not white because I don't look German. I've had Spanish teachers thinking I'm Portuguese. At this point, I'm just like, look, I'm probably not what you think I am, and that's also okay. And in your case, like, that's not much to forgive because you don't know, right? And you just you look at me and it's like, what is that person, right?
Yeah, so my question is like, as a child, if you can pass white, then and the black dad is out of your life. So how this race make an impact in your life of your identity?
Well, put it this way. The concept of white passing is funny to me because I do understand what it means and I do understand where it applies, but it only applies but to a certain extent, because if you have people who are white who will identify you as not white, then you kind of don't belong either. Like, I've met people with two black parents, one relatively light skinned, one a little bit more dark skinned, and their child turned out even lighter than them. That child is still black.
So as a child, did you fear other kids know you are different?
No. Other kids never treated me any different. I mean, I was friends with a guy from Barbados, and he was dark skinned. They didn't treat him any different. So, like, as in my childhood, I didn't have per se experiences with racism. They all came with adults.
Okay. Like in adult life, how you experience the racism?
I mean, some of it is just when people mistype you, and then they have this idea of you in their heads, and they start either talking down to you or questioning where you, like, questioning what you're saying based on, you can't say that because you're white. I'm like, am I though? You know what I mean? And then I tried to explain to them. Some of them will listen, some of them won't. And at some point I just decided, you know what, I'm only gonna explain myself to people who ask. Everybody else, I really don't care.
Cool. My other question is you said you were put in a group home?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was 7.
And you were put there away from your parents?
Yes.
Was that legal?
Yes.
Did they get the consent of your mom?
My mom was the one who decided that would be best.
Wow. And
I still saw my mom like every other weekend. You know, so I would have to make like a 3-hour trek from Potsdam by bus and train into Berlin to where we would live. But it was because she hoped that with the condition that I had, people could help me there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't want to say that the time there was not useful.
Mm-hmm.
It was rough though. Like I fought other kids every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. I fought the adult supervisors almost every day. And I mean, they put us together with kids who came from like kids with parents that had mental health issues who literally weren't capable of raising a child.
Mm-hmm.
They put us together with kids from violent house homes. I learned the first time about sexual assault from a classmate in that institution that I learned was raped by her father, and she was 6.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've seen at a very, very young age, I've seen the darkness from like that we inflict upon each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I just decided for myself that this doesn't have to define me. I want better for myself. I don't know how to get there, but I'm gonna get there, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And it's been it's been a really long and a really hard road for most of it, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
And you said you decided to stop taking the pills.
Yeah,
And how old were you when you made the decision?
8.
8. How 8 years old, like they are supposed to be at play, they are supposed to just be innocent. How did you have the capacity to make decision for yourself, make at 8?
I don't know how to answer that question because I think a lot of it comes on like certain impulses you have, you know, and you even if you're a child, you question the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
You question, why am I feeling how I'm feeling? Why am I in this position? You know, and we come to different conclusions and we come to different decisions. But my decision at the time was I didn't want to be dependent on adults because I couldn't trust adults.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't trust their judgment. I didn't trust that they wanted the best for me. So I decided that I'm not gonna take those pills anymore. Maybe that's a mistake, maybe not, but I will find my own solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't tell anybody that I was doing this. Like there was one day, one of the supervisors came along and he found a drawer full of those pills, like literally dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And he's like, why are you not taking them? I'm like, because I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think they help me. Like, yeah, but you have to tell somebody. I'm like, yeah, now you know. And I haven't taken them since. And it was, I mean, a lot of it also had to do with like a thyroid function
Mm-hmm.
that was like producing too much of a certain hormone. But I really felt like I could beat this by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it took the entirety of my youth and parts of my young adulthood, but I got there in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so now I'm at a point where I can very much regulate most of my emotions very, very judiciously and very consciously.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at some other people who didn't have challenges that I had. They still struggle with emotional impulses. And I'm just like, well, what can I tell you? There's help out there for you. You just got to go get it.
Yeah. And you said like the struggle of your in the school, later at the school, being in a mostly middle class, upper class school,
Yeah.
being the only like a kid from a poor family. How did you power through? Like, how did you survive those years?
I probably wouldn't have been able to do so if I hadn't already gone through the gauntlet of living 3.5 years in a group home. You know, like at that point, and I grew up in Neukölln, and Neukölln at the time when I was a kid was a very rough district. Not just like the junkies that you see in the train station, but we've had like territory wars in the 90s where drug dealers would fight each other over corners. We had rocker gangs like the Bandidos and the Hells Angels fighting each other in the streets with shotguns and like other weapons and so on and so forth. That was a thing. My mom told me stories from the 80s where there were, you know, pimps fighting over territory. There were other gangs fighting over territory. Like Berlin used to be a lot more violent than it is today, you know, and I kind of grew up in the era where it started to slowly become a little bit more, I want to say, organized in a way, because what I mean by that is now we still have violence in the streets, but it's like we know where it comes from most of the time. Like these are not isolated incidents anymore. But back then it was just fucking chaos. And I go to elementary school, right? First, second grade. I don't look both ways to look for cars. I look for the entrances of houses where people are literally watching. Oh, looks like a target. Let's go get him and rob him. You know, so that's how I grew up. And I fought, like I said, I fought every day in the group home. So when I got to high school and people started bullying me, I'm like, first of all, none of you motherfuckers can do shit to me. You don't threaten me. I fought like I was 10 years old fighting 14-year-olds. Like, who the fuck are you? You know? So my whole stance on the matter was like, you can do whatever you want. You're just never going to have me back down. I'm not going to be a victim. If it's going to be war, it's going to be war. I don't care. But I'm not going to be a victim. It's not happening. And for 3 years, I went through that. And it didn't do wonders for my disposition. I could tell you that much. It's always funny to me when I meet people today and they always say like, oh, but you know, you're so warm and welcoming. I'm like, you should have met me when I was 15.
Yeah, your childhood, your upbringing sounds so much full of conflicts, violence.
Yeah.
Were you able to find a little bit of stability from it? Were you able to maintain friendship?
I had friends, a very few. Like I had people that, you know what I find like over the years, there's like two people that I still have contact with that I've known since 2006, 2007. Everybody else just kind of fell by the wayside. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, I can understand because here's the thing, right? When you see somebody struggling, it will affect the friendship over time.
Yeah.
Even if that person likes you, even if that person respects you and cares for you, but at the same time, it's like, yo, I got my own fucking issues. Sort your shit out. And then people just drift apart like that, you know? So I did have friends at the time, like a handful of them. But for the most part, I really just found stability and solace in just making music, playing basketball. I was very, very competitive back then, but I had to stop when I turned around 17 because of a heart issue that I had. It was I was being selected for like a training camp for kids who were like 16, 17, and we were supposed to try out for the German youth national team. But before we were selected, we had to go and do like a full physical checkup, and I was sent to the cardiologist. And the cardiologist checked me out and he said, I have some really bad news because you got to stop playing now because you have hypertrophy and arrhythmia. So I had an irregular heartbeat and enlarged heart chamber, which in a way meant that I was like my stamina levels were just way beyond most teenagers my age. And the problem was it put so much strain on my body that the cardiologist feared that I could just have a heart attack and die, right? And we've seen multiple athletes go undiagnosed and die. You know, like Mark Vivian Foé was I think was a Cameroonian soccer player who died during a game at the World Cup. You know, and I've met a Russian kid who was very talented. He was a year older than me, and when I quit playing, a year later, I watched the news and I saw that he died too, from the same thing that I had.
Wow.
But he went undiagnosed,
Wow.
and I thought like, wow, that could have been me, you know. And I think what I tried to accomplish by putting so much energy into music and in athletics at the time was that I figured that if I just become successful at this, then all the problems that I have can be mitigated. All the like I can compensate for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work this way.
When did you realize you are a talented kid? When did you realize, really fall in love with music and know you have a talent?
I think I started to realize that I was getting good at this around 5 years in.
And how old were you?
I was 14, 15-ish, you know, because my thing was, when I started, I was just venting, right? I was just using this to put stuff on paper that I couldn't tell people. So there was a lot of bitterness and a lot of anger in those lyrics that I used to write. And after a while, I was like, I've been doing this for a long time. I want to get good at this. And I started to listen to other artists, and I wanted to understand how they did what they did, you know. And I just studied them, and I realized like, oh wow, I'm so not at their level. I need to work harder, and I need to really put time into it. So I started writing like 10 songs a week. Yeah. And around that time when I was recording my first song and I performed my first song, I realized like, yeah, I can do this. I'm getting good at this. And then that's when my passion actually really took hold. I mean, there was a time where I was dealing with a group of people who were like a really motley crew of different nationalities and different talents, and we would just make music together for a couple of years. And in that time frame, I made 250 songs.
Wow.
Like to this day, right now, I would say I've made like 450 songs, if not more.
You know, like, while you share your journey, I see so much similarities between us, but I almost feel envy because you found music at such a young age, and now I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
I understand as a creative, as a performer, when you can immerse yourself in the art, creating process, it's the best feeling in the world, and it can protect you from so much pain.
Yeah.
And I wish, like, when I'm hearing your story, I wish I was as lucky as you are, that can find it's art, like art is almost like a shield. No matter what happens outside, if we can create and we can soak ourselves into this world, lots of pains goes away, and it's also a tool for us to open it up. So I really, really envy you. I ask myself, we share very similar story. You actually got my got ticket to watch my solo show, Child from Wuhan, but because of your back problem, you didn't show up last week. I hope you still can make it someday.
I will, for sure.
So I believe you are really, really resonate with my solo show. It feels like it feels like another version of each other, but happening in a parallel universe. I grew up in a very impoverished family with a handicapped mom, My dad has been absent from my life. Uh, we've been rejected from the whole family because of we are women, and being bullied at school, being discriminated. Being when I fought back, I also like I was a kid with fire. Like when bullies beat me, I always fight back. But that just attract more violence.
Yeah.
And at the end,
Yes.
the adults would blame me for fighting back.
Yeah, same.
And for blame me for my anger issue. But how can I not be angry if I've been treated like that? So I resonate a lot with you, but I think on top of that is this constant feeling of I'm not special, I'm not unique, and I'm not talented. Growing up, my mom always telling me that I'm not smart. I'm not smart. I'm not smart. She's like, how smart? She was the top student in her school, and she always showing off how amazing she was, and like I'm not even 10% of her intelligence, and I don't have talents. And she, on one hand, she would trash so much about my dad, like how not a good person he is, but on the other hand, very often she would say, you are just like your dad. She would say, I'm so smart, but you didn't get that from me. You are just like your dad. You are not talented, but you are hardworking, and just try as hard as you can. And I didn't find my talent until I was 28 years old, like 4 years ago, because my whole life I've been told I'm not smart, I'm not intelligent. My only way is to study hard, and I never had a dream in my life. And so growing up, my mom keep telling me, oh, you are an accountant, you are an accountant, you are an accountant, that's what you need to do. And I got 2 degrees from business schools, trying to be an accountant, trying to be an analyst. And although I got really good degrees from good universities, but I'm always one of the worst in the class. And after years of this type of feedback, like I wasn't able to concentrate, I wasn't able to focus, I wasn't interested in the subject. I just, after years and years of studying on the subject, I just never got a hang. And at one point, I just accept that I'm stupid and I'm not capable of doing things. But then one day, I got into comedy. I realized, oh, what they told me is not true at all. I have talent. I can be creative. I am unique, and this gives me so much power. But it only came when I was 28 years old. Knowing you found out music at such young age, really, I envy you.
Let me try to put that in a perspective. I understand what you mean. In my case, most of my family was working class. Most of my family, like my mother and aunt and uncle and grandma and all that stuff, like they never had higher education. You know, obviously it's a different generation, and so back in the day, like people would go out of school in the 9th grade or whatever, or 10th grade, right? So when I was in that group home, there was a teacher who saw potential in me. She saw it in the way I wrote, and the way I expressed myself, and the multiple interests that I had. And she sent me to Potsdam to do an IQ test. I mean, we know now that there are obviously various problems regarding that format of testing for intelligence.
Yes.
But at the time, it was just to kind of like get a gauge of what can this kid actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was tested at like my general score was around between 145 and 150,
Mm-hmm.
and my skill for language was around 155 to 160. So when my mother heard that, she thought like there was all these expectations that I had to fulfill now.
Mm-hmm.
But all this time I did not get the chance to be a kid really because I was dealing with all this other stuff. And then I would do music. And my father, my father has been a musician all of his life. And
Oh, you did get it from somewhere.
yeah, I mean, I guess, he and we were in contact for 5 years in my youth.
Mm-hmm.
But I basically kicked him out of my life at age 20 because I said that I didn't want to deal with his entitlement, and I didn't want to deal with his narcissism because that was one of his issues. And I was like, I don't even know. There was the last conversation we had, I said like, I literally don't know how to be a man yet, and you're talking what you're expecting of me. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically cut him off. But during the conversations that we did have in that time, there was always this thing between like, he comes from this era of prog rock,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, he would constantly go on and on about the Beatles and Pink Floyd and all these bands, and I'm just sitting there like, look, I listened to classical music as a kid, I listened to hip hop as a kid. Those worlds just don't meet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's literally the typical boomer versus millennial clash, so that didn't meet. But he always said I was throwing my talent away by doing rap, which is incredibly arrogant, dismissive. So most time, like, I think people in my family always thought that I'm just throwing all my talents away. Like, not that I didn't have them. It's just like, well, you're just wasting your talents. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And my response to that was like, well, you didn't do any of these things, and you will never have my talents because you have nothing to look forward to other than the misery that you already sit in, because you accepted that there's no way to go for you. So all you do is project onto me.
Yeah.
All you do is hoist your expectations onto me. I don't have to live up to anybody's expectations. And every time I tried to, it failed. Like, I did business education just like you, and I got like an apprenticeship degree or whatever in what's it called, foreign correspondence in English and Spanish. And I did have decent grades because I didn't have to really try hard, and I just didn't want to work in that field. I only did it so my whole family would shut the fuck up. In the back of my mind, I'm like, nah, I'm just gonna do music. Fuck all of this shit. And now, like, I've had jobs and I can always get by, but it's like, I also understand how hard it is to make it with your dreams. The amount of work that you need, the network you need, the money you need to make it. And that was my biggest issue. So it's like, I knew I had a gift, and I knew I had something that I worked very hard at. So I knew I had a skill, but I lacked belief in myself because all this time people always had something negative to say. I would make an album, my first album, and I made it all by myself. And I got the cover and sorted out all the details and whatnot, because the people that I work with, they weren't putting the support in, and then they had the fucking nerve to question me. Like, what do you mean you're gonna put it out this way? What do you mean you don't have any singles? You will never sell any records. Da, 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 da. And I'm just like, then I'm just gonna do this without you, I guess.
So you talked a lot about self-healing and the tools.
Yeah.
I want to go a bit in depth into it.
Yeah.
But before that, I want to ask you,
Yeah.
what you shared with me was very intense.
Yeah.
And although I also shared, like, I have very similar journey,
Yeah.
but it took me many years to speak it out
Yeah.
loud
Yeah.
without feeling ashamed.
Yeah.
For many years in my life, I've been hiding, like pretending I'm normal. I'm one of others, like other people.
Yeah.
So, were you always so open? Were you being ashamed? And did it change along the way?
I only got better at it. I still have moments, you know, I still have things that I'm very unwilling to share. I still have things like deep wounds that I'm only, I can only address piece by piece, you know. But if I look at the entirety of my challenges, right, I don't think 20-year-old me would have envisioned me being here. You know, I don't think 20-year-old me would have thought that I make it here. You know, like, even the whole issue with depression is like, I had to learn how to just sit in the feeling, not fight it. You know, it was like everybody's like, yeah, you gotta dust yourself off, and you gotta be strong, and you gotta be. Nah, I was tired of being strong. I was so fucking tired because this whole time, all these things that were piling up, I had to stay stoic in the face of that kind of adversity, right? And I got tired of it. I got tired of being expected to just get on with it. And so I just decided at some point to sit in that feeling, to feel the fear, to feel the anger, to feel the despair, the loneliness, and sit in it. And then at some point say, you know what? I have enough of that. It's time. Now it's time to get going. Like, I had to, it's like when you're in a very deep trench of water. I had to keep diving until I can touch the ground. And only then can I like release and go back up again. But I also learned in my latter 20s, I don't always have to go to the ground, because sometimes when you do that, you become very self-destructive. Like, you allow problems to just pile on. You know, you don't, it's like, hey, I don't want to deal with this. And then, you know, you look in the mailbox and it's like bills that you just haven't paid because you just don't give a shit. You know, like, that's one of these things that happens when you're dealing with depression, when you're dealing with certain issues, where you're just like, I can't deal with the world right now.
Thank you for sharing with me this. My question was,
How I learned to deal with it?
my question was it a period of time? Like, since when are you able to share this without feeling ashamed? Or were you ever feeling ashamed to share about what you've been through?
I think rap helped me. I mean, a lot of it came through the lens of anger, right? But even so, like, even anger can be a very useful tool to express pain.
Yeah.
And yeah, you often don't talk about the vulnerable parts, but I learned that too. Like, I learned how to say, like, hey, I am feeling lonely, I am feeling inadequate, I am feeling betrayed and left alone, all these things. And then as I went on in my life, I think the shame part, that's the interesting one. I think I let that go in my mid-20s, when I realized that I have so much more to be proud of than to be ashamed of, because only I know my journey. And I knew people who had similar issues who didn't make it here. I met people who had similar conditions that they were raised in. They turned criminal. People turned, like, they had substance abuse issues. People committed suicide, you know? So I always looked at that as like, I got to keep fighting no matter what. And as long as I'm fighting, or as long as I'm learning and growing and healing and all these things, I'm already winning. What is there to be ashamed about? Like, I'm still in this. I didn't give up. you know? And that's a big realization. And then also learning through friends that who show you like, hey, I've known you for this amount of time, and I already see like the person that you were when I met you and the person that you are now, and the kind of peace that you managed to attain, the insight you managed to attain, the self-awareness you managed to attain. Like, I see your growth, and that's so valuable. You know, there's so much you can, whenever people talk about self-love and self-care and blah blah blah, like there's a lot of truth in that, but it only gets you but so far. You need other input, you need other people to see you and say like, hey, what you're doing, keep doing that. And I think like when you told me about your scope for your solo show, I immediately saw like, I love that somebody is actually thinking in layers beyond just like, oh, I'm just gonna have like 60 minutes of jokes. You know what I mean? You're telling a story with it. You're telling not just like not just your own story in a way, but also relaying that to people that have similar issues. You know what I mean? So people see you and they hear you, and they can see your bravery. You know, this is what I always tell people, regardless what their creative medium is, when they're scared to be vulnerable on stage. It's like people wish they were you. People wish they had your fucking bravery. They want to be. They want to tell people what they're feeling, but they're all afraid of judgment. And I think with people like you and I, we've been judged all our lives. And it's up to us to say, do we let that stop us?
Yeah. I think while you're talking, I feel really resonate. Like for very long, even like I feel okay. I can be proud of myself.
Yeah.
Like I may make a good living. I'm the first person growing like in my family to get a university education, to leave China, to have a good life, and this is my source of pride. But while talking with you, I realized like really like the fact that we grow up in such violent environment, the fact that we are kind, people,
We try.
it's already a huge success.
Yeah.
That we are giving love and positivity to this world instead of create more hatred and more violence. I think the fact that we are not criminals, the fact that we are not hurting anyone, the fact that we have the ability to feel love and kindness is already a huge success.
Yeah.
And I think we both should be proud of ourselves.
For sure.
I
mean, it's also like in my case, it's also, you know, there's the added layer of toxic masculinity, in a sense where I never really resonated with other male peers. You know, like I hated how they interacted with women. I hated how they talked about them. I hated how they always used violence to express themselves. They never used just honesty, you know? It was always about like, no, I have to have my way or I'm seen as weak, you know? Yeah. And for me, as much as I've fought and as much as I've had to play that game with my peers, with older people, as much as I've had to literally go into almost like psychological warfare to get out of situations, the older I got, the more I realized I don't really want to be this person that is closed off to everybody. I don't want to be like, how can I complain that I'm alone and everybody kind of like avoids me when I let nobody in. You know, how can I say that I don't receive love when I literally allow nobody to see me? You know, and that's something that I had to learn in the last couple of years. Like I've gotten a lot better at that. When I was I mean, I had one relationship in my early 20s that wasn't easy, but even with all my shit, with all my shit that I was carrying, she and I never fought.
Mm-hmm.
Like we split because our paths were diverging.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted things, I wanted different things. Our timelines didn't align. But we never yelled at each other. We never called each other out of our names. We never, like, every time when that happens, when I saw like tension got up, I would just leave. I would just like, I'm gonna be back in 30 minutes and then we talk about it again, but I'm not gonna sit here and allow you to provoke me and then I start provoking you and then we'll say something we really regret.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I said to her back then, like, you were the first person that I can actually share myself with. I don't want us to end up in the same dynamics that I've had to deal with everybody else. And that was like the first step towards learning.
Yeah.
There is love in this world. It's not going to be easy, but it's like the one thing that's always worth it.
Yes. I that's really glad to hear. I think part of the healing journey is really to break the chain of the transgenerational trauma.
Yes.
That to not repeat the mistakes our parents have made, and to, despite that we were raised in an environment so unhealthy, without parents lead us to find the healthy pattern, that we are able to establish it for ourselves. I think it's really, really a huge success in life.
Yes.
And thank you so much for sharing this. So my last question, not last question, I actually just a small thing I want to share is that for many, many years, like, I feel so ashamed about myself, so ashamed. I tried to hide myself for so many years, and with doing this solo show, I'm finally able to tell the story, who I am, where I'm from, and being in my life, I've been accused by my best Chinese friend in Germany, because we were very close friends for many years, but she being an upper class, from an upper class family, I be very ignorant and assume everyone else from the same environment. I've been silenced for so many years and try to pretend I'm one of them. And after many years of friendship, I realized she doesn't know anything about me. And when the day has come, I finally told them my background. What I got is the accusation of me playing the victim. So that has traumatized me really significantly.
For sure.
And when I was before I was doing my solo show, I made a conscious decision that I will never promote my show within the Chinese community. But I got quite some Chinese audience. So when the first shows come in, like I got Chinese audience, I was really, really nervous. I was really afraid they will call me a liar. They will call me playing the victim. They will call me that making up a persona for pity. I was really, really afraid of it. But when the day came, I shared my story on stage. Instead of all the accusation I expected, I got people coming to me telling me they are feeling the same, and they were hiding too. And the fact that I can share it make them feel so empowered. So I realized that the the shame I feared, I wasn't alone with that shame, and the fact that now I can speak about it, it's not only helping me but also helping many other people.
For sure.
So I really glad I did it, and I really appreciate that now you, especially as a man, to be so vulnerable, sharing your wounds and your past, and I think we are making positive impact to the world around us.
I hope so. I mean, what I wanted to say in response to you having this kind of rift initially with the Chinese community, I felt that way about myself and the Black community a lot of times, because it was a piece that I did 4 years ago, called Glass House, where I say, I don't have the piece in my mind, but I basically speak about how white people and Black people aren't my tribe, and I explain why. I explain that when, like, I came from a Black man, but that Black man abandoned me, and then when I came to the Black community, it's like, hey, I'm also one of y'all, they would look me in my face and say, but you're not Black enough, and they would basically turn me away. And so my response to that was like, all right, if that's how you feel, then you are not my tribe. And I performed that piece, and there were 3 Black people in the crowd walking out. They looked at me like they nodded because they knew where I was coming from. They knew that that's a thing that exists, but it was so uncomfortable for them that they did not want to hear that. And they walked out. And to this day, there are still instances where I have to explain myself to Black people, and sometimes I entertain it, and sometimes I'm like, look, Rennie Edolodge said, I don't want to talk about race with white people. My addendum to that is I oftentimes don't want to talk about race with anyone, because it's a topic that, as much as people try to turn it around and use it as a sense of unity, it's mainly been a divisive thing, and I just don't want to live my life according to some weird ideas of who I belong to or where I belong. I just kind of want to have people around me that share values like mine, that want to be more inclusive, that want to be also curious. Like, it's different if you want to learn about other people that have different backgrounds and so on and so forth, rather than walking into a room and say, this is my background and this is what matters to me, and everything else is just exists in opposition to that. And you see that with people from any kind of culture. Everything is like, it turns so adversarial, and I don't want that. I don't think that's how we get anywhere, personally.
Okay, I'm actually having my last question now.
Okay.
You work with rap music.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but when you are feeling down, when you are unhappy, do you have an album you listen again and again?
It's funny. I think it all depends where I am at that particular time. Sometimes my happy music, right, would be jazz, because I love all kinds of music. Sometimes my happy music is trip hop, actually. Stuff like Massive Attack and Portishead and all that stuff. Sometimes it's hardcore gangster rap.
So if now you have to recommend one album to our audience, which one would it be?
Oof. Recommend an album for what purpose?
For whenever you are feeling down.
Ooh, whenever I'm feeling down. I want to pick something good because there's a like you know what I said, like there's a lot of different ways this can go. I think I also listen to too much music in my life. Like
So the first one on top of your mind?
right now, Zaki Ibrahim, Every Opposite. It's an album from 2012, 13, I want to say. Zaki Ibrahim is a Canadian slash South African electronica artist. Um, and that album in particular is one that makes me cry a lot. And it sounds counterintuitive when you're already down, but it's not like it's not a sadness cry. It's a I'm being understood cry.
Yeah, you release.
It's a catharsis cry. And there's the first song on that album, Draw the Line, is all about like choosing personal freedom over the hurt and the pain that other people inflict on us. And saying like, I don't mind when people take things from me. I'm just gonna give anyway because their pain is not my pain, and I can't allow their pain to stop my healing.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for the sharing and the recommendation.
Thank you for having me.
I never got so emotional during a podcast recording. Your story just so close to me. And yeah, thank you so much.
There's one last thing I want to say. You said you've been doing this for like 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
I'm only projecting because like I've been doing this for a long time and I see artists, you know, that on their journey. I look forward to the day, and I don't know when it's gonna come because all of our stories are different. But there's gonna come a day where you will sit there and you'll think to yourself, I have used my art to deal with my pain for so long. I want to use my art to document my healing. And when you do get there, please let me know.
I'm already doing it.
Fuck yes.
The whole project, Berlin Mental Health Festival, with this podcast, today I'm actually thinking every show I put on, every story I'm listening, it's part of my healing. It's part of my practice. True. Knowing that I'm not alone, knowing that lots of people have been through similar things and they all survived, that now I can use this power to help others, to show them there's light. For me, it's healing.
True.
Yeah.
I was thinking because like when I look at my own music, I've put out 12 projects in my time that I've been making music, and most of these projects have been about like, I'm going through this is my challenge right now, and and at some point I decided that I want to make music about my insights rather than my challenges. Yeah. So I will still speak about my challenges, but it's more like from a perspective of I've been there before. I know these patterns. This is how I'm going to deal with them. So what I meant was, let's say you're writing on a new solo show at some point. That story is going to be different because that person that you started out as has grown so much. Yeah. And so the things you talk about might be similar, but the way you will talk about them will be different. And I look forward to that.
You need to see my solo show first.
Yeah, right.
Cool. So thank you so much for listening. If you have survived so far, I guess you enjoyed this episode. So a little announcement. If you haven't known that now I have my Patreon account. For as little as €0.50, you can sponsor me for a falafel sandwich, so I can focus more on working on the mental health project. Thank you so much. I hope to hear from you soon, maybe at one of my live shows I hope you stay safe, stay happy. Oh, yeah, be open to your emotions. And bye.